The experiment that divided children, blue eyes versus brown eyes. The day innocence broke. There is a moment in human history when the world stopped pretending that cruelty is something reserved only for adults. A moment when the thin, fragile line between innocence and darkness was ripped apart not in a war zone, not inside a secret laboratory, but inside an ordinary classroom in a quiet town in Iowa. It was here, among wooden desks, colorful posters, and the voices of 8-year-old children, that the world was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Discrimination does not begin with hate. It begins with something much simpler and far more terrifying. In this one classroom, on an otherwise ordinary morning, a single decision by a single teacher exposed a part of human psychology that most adults spend their entire lives denying. We like to believe that prejudice, superiority, and cruelty are learned slowly over years, shaped by politics, culture, trauma, or history. But what unfolded in that room revealed something darker, that the seeds of cruelty lie dormant within us, ready to grow the moment someone gives them permission. This is the story of the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment. A lesson originally designed for children, but one that exposed a truth so raw, so disturbing, that it has echoed through psychology, education, and society for more than half a century. It's a story about obedience, identity, and the terrifying ease with which ordinary people can be divided. A story that shows how quickly kindness can collapse, how fragile morality truly is, and how even the youngest among us can transform into something unrecognizable when the world around them shifts. What happened in that classroom was not a social exercise. It was not a game. It was a psychological mirror, one that forced us to look at what we really are when the rules change and when authority whispers a simple idea, you are better, they are worse. And in the reflection of those children's faces, we saw something we never expected to see. We saw ourselves. A nation in shock, a classroom unprepared. In 1968, the morning after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, the entire United States woke up in a haze of grief, confusion, and anger. Cities erupted in riots, streets filled with smoke. Television screens showed images that looked like scenes from a country tearing itself apart. But in the small rural town of Riceville, Iowa, life appeared deceptively peaceful. No protests, no chaos, just farmland, quiet neighborhoods, and children preparing for another day of school as if the world hadn't changed forever. That morning, a third-grade teacher named Jane Elliott walked into her classroom carrying more than books and lesson plans. She carried the weight of a question no training program had ever prepared her for. How do you teach 8-year-olds about the meaning of a man's death when that man was murdered because of the color of his skin? Her students didn't understand what had really happened. They understood that someone important had been killed, but not why. They repeated phrases they heard whispered at home, parroting the prejudices of adults who themselves barely understood the forces shaping their own beliefs. Some of the children asked innocent questions. Others made comments that chilled Elliott to her core. Comments that revealed just how deeply racism had seeped into their environment, even though many of them had never met a single black person in their entire lives. They weren't hateful. They weren't cruel. They were simply mirroring the world around them. A world that had taught them to divide people long before they could spell the word discrimination. In that moment, standing in front of tiny desks and expectant faces, Elliott realized something terrifying. Her students had no real understanding of racism because they had never experienced it. To them, equality was an abstract idea, fairness was a word in a textbook, and prejudice was something that happened far away, to people they didn't know, for reasons they couldn't grasp. So she made a decision that would follow her for the rest of her life, cost her friendships, make her a target, and eventually turn her into one of the most controversial educators in America. She decided that if her students couldn't understand racism through lectures, then they would understand it through experience. Real, immediate, emotionally unforgettable experience. What she didn't anticipate was how quickly the experiment would spiral into something raw and disturbing, something that would haunt some of her students for years, because when she opened that psychological door, she didn't just reveal the nature of racism, she revealed the nature of human beings themselves. The birth of a manufactured hierarchy. Elliot told the children that blue-eyed people were superior, smarter, cleaner, better. She said it with the calm authority that only a trusted teacher can wield, not as an opinion, but as an absolute truth. To reinforce her claim, she backed it with scientific facts she invented on the spot. She spoke about enzymes, about intelligence, about how eye color supposedly determine personality. None of it was real, but to 8-year-olds, it sounded official enough to reshape their understanding of themselves. Then she turned to the brown-eyed children. In a single breath, she labeled them lazy, careless, unfocused. Children who didn't try hard enough and didn't deserve the same privileges as their blue-eyed classmates. These weren't just descriptions. They were identities being assigned in real time, and the room shifted under the weight of those labels. The separation began immediately. Brown-eyed children were no longer allowed to play with blue-eyed children. They lost access to certain playground equipment. They were forced to sit in different parts of the classroom. They were even told to drink from different fountains. The blue-eyed children, meanwhile, were elevated into a new social class. They received longer recess, second helpings at lunch, extra time, extra praise, and extra approval for doing absolutely nothing except having the right eye color. A simple pat on the head, something innocent a day earlier, suddenly transformed into a symbol of superiority. And then, almost imperceptibly, something started to change. Innocence turns on command. What happened next was not a game. It wasn't pretend, or play acting, or a misunderstanding. It was a psychological transformation, fast, powerful, and unsettling. Within minutes, children who had been inseparable friends the day before began insulting one another. Blue-eyed kids mocked brown-eyed kids with a confidence they didn't know they had. Some refused to sit next to their former friends. Others snatched away toys or cut in line, now convinced they had the right to do so. The classroom, once cooperative and balanced, mutated into a hierarchy where cruelty felt justified, even natural. The most disturbing change, however, wasn't in the insults. It was in their performance. Test scores changed overnight. The blue-eyed children, told they were smarter, suddenly were smarter. They finished their work faster. They raised their hands higher. They spoke with more certainty, more pride, more energy. Their confidence surged simply because someone in authority told them it should. Meanwhile, the brown-eyed children, the ones labeled inferior, began to fall apart. They stumbled over simple words. They made mistakes on assignments they could easily complete the day before. Some became quiet, others frustrated, and many began doubting themselves in ways Elliot had never seen. They shrank under the weight of an identity that had been handed to them only hours earlier. Nothing about them had changed. Not their intelligence, not their ability, not their potential. The only thing that changed was the story they were told about who they were. And yet that story was powerful enough to reshape their behavior, their confidence, and their entire sense of self. What unfolded in that classroom was not a skit. It was a controlled collapse of innocence, a real-time demonstration of how fragile the human mind is when confronted with authority and division. Reversal, the dark flip. The following morning, Elliot walked into the classroom and quietly announced that she had made a mistake. The science she had cited the day before wasn't accurate. It wasn't the blue-eyed children who were superior. It was the brown-eyed children. With a few calm sentences, she flipped the entire social hierarchy upside down. Instantly, everything changed. Now the brown-eyed kids were the chosen ones. They received the praise, the attention, the subtle but intoxicating power that comes from having an adult validate your worth. Suddenly, they could do no wrong. Their mistakes were brushed aside. Their questions were treated as brilliant. Even the way they walked changed, shoulders back, chins raised, a quiet swagger born from the permission to dominate. And they took that permission without hesitation. Children who, just the day before, had been quiet or hurt or humiliated, now had the chance to strike back, and many of them did. The cruelty they had endured didn't make them more compassionate. It made them more eager to turn the system in their favor. They mimicked the exact behavior that had wounded them, excluding classmates, mocking them, refusing to share, insisting they were smarter, better, more deserving. Some of the brown-eyed children didn't stop at simple teasing. Their tone shifted. Their body language hardened. They snapped at blue-eyed classmates, belittled them, and enforced the new rules with surprising zeal. The reversal revealed something that disturbed Elliot far more deeply than the original experiment. What shocked her wasn't that the children behaved badly. Children can be mean. Adults know this. What stunned her was how fast they adapted to the new reality, how effortlessly they slipped into the roles of the oppressor, how quickly they aligned themselves with power. These were obedient, cheerful 8-year-olds, kids who still struggled to tie their shoes or remember multiplication tables. Yet when given a structure that rewarded domination, they learned to discriminate with brutal efficiency. The transformation required no hatred, no long history of conflict, no lessons in superiority. All it took was a single sentence from a trusted authority figure. Brown-eyed people are better. That was enough. Within moments, the classroom had reorganized itself into a perfectly functioning system of oppression. Rules, privileges, consequences, social dominance, fear, obedience. Every element of discrimination that adults spend decades constructing, reproduced by children in under 24 hours. Elliot realized she wasn't just teaching them a lesson. She was witnessing a fundamental truth about human psychology. A truth most people deny because it's too uncomfortable to accept. We do not become discriminatory slowly, over time. We do not need propaganda or ideology or generations of conflict. We need only a divide and someone in authority to tell us which side we belong to. The disturbing simplicity of division. This experiment revealed something psychologists had long suspected, but were often reluctant to say out loud: that humans do not require long histories of conflict, deep generational hatred, or carefully engineered propaganda to justify discrimination. We want to believe prejudice is complex, that it grows slowly, fed by years of cultural conditioning. But Eliot's classroom shattered that illusion. It showed that discrimination can be built on something much simpler: a category and permission. With nothing but eye color, an arbitrary physical trait, and a few authoritative statements, Eliot created a social hierarchy so powerful that it reshaped behavior, emotion, and identity within hours. Children who had never questioned their self-worth began to doubt their intelligence. Children who had never considered themselves superior suddenly believed they were entitled to more. Eliot demonstrated that identity isn't just a label, it's a weapon, and it can be drawn instantly, even by children who barely understand the meaning of the words they're using. The disturbing truth is this: cruelty doesn't begin with monsters. It begins with normal people, ordinary, familiar, everyday individuals who are told a simple story: you are better, they are worse. It doesn't take ideology. It doesn't take political belief. It doesn't take centuries of history. It takes authority giving you a role and your mind doing the rest. The children weren't acting out of hatred. They weren't motivated by any deep ideological belief. Instead, they were driven by instincts woven deep into human psychology: the instinct to belong, to be part of the group that is seen as right, the instinct to protect their status, even if that means pushing others down, the instinct to obey authority, even when something in their chest whispers that what they're doing feels wrong. These instincts, when activated, don't require malice. They require opportunity. Eliot's classroom became a miniature society, a simplified, concentrated model of racism, prejudice, and group domination. In 2 days, she recreated, on a small, almost frighteningly efficient scale, the same patterns that shape entire nations: the willingness to conform, the eagerness to accept hierarchy, the speed with which identity becomes justification. Watching the children switch roles from victims to oppressors and back again showed something few adults want to admit. The line between victim and perpetrator is razor thin. Sometimes it's only a day apart. Sometimes it's the difference between being told you belong here and you don't. In that tiny classroom in Iowa, Eliot didn't just teach a lesson about racism. She exposed a truth about humanity: that the darkness we fear in society doesn't come from outside forces. It emerges from within us, quietly, instinctively, and far more easily than we'd ever like to believe. What adults never outgrow. Whether one agrees with Eliot's methods or not, the experiment leaves us with a truth that is almost impossible to ignore. A truth that crawls beneath the skin and stays there. Our identities can be manipulated with terrifying ease. We like to imagine ourselves as stable, independent thinkers, immune to suggestion, protected by our principles and morals. But in Eliot's classroom, identity shifted with nothing more than a sentence, a tone, a claim spoken by someone the children trusted. That's all it took. The experiment revealed that the foundations of who we think we are, our confidence, our self-worth, even our sense of morality, can be bent, reshaped, or redirected by the smallest nudge from authority. The children didn't resist the new identities they were assigned. They embraced them. They slipped into their roles so naturally, so effortlessly, that it should unsettle anyone who believes humans are inherently resistant to manipulation. And yet, the most chilling part isn't what happened during the experiment. It's what happened after. The children, at the end of the lesson, put down their roles as quickly as they had picked them up. They ran to recess together. They laughed. They returned to being friends. Their cruelty evaporated almost as fast as it appeared, dissolving back into the innocence of childhood. But adults don't forget their roles so easily. In the real world, people carry their assigned identities for decades. Labels become truths, hierarchies become tradition, division becomes culture. And once discrimination calcifies into adulthood, it rarely disappears with a simple announcement that the exercise is over. Eliot's experiment wasn't just a lesson for children. It was a mirror held up to every society, every community, every individual who believes they're immune to prejudice. It forces us to confront a dark reality that the same forces that transform those children in minutes are the same forces that shape nations, fuel hatred, create violence, and define human history. The children could forget. Adults rarely do. And sometimes, they never even try. If you want more deep dives into the darkest corners of human behavior, psychology, and real-world experiments, subscribe to Dark Logic. Every week, we uncover the hidden patterns that shape society, the ones we pretend don't exist, but the ones we can no longer afford to ignore. Join us and see the world the way it really is.